Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today, we're gonna jump into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Swift Raven. Keep bowling, the pro shop will fix it? Okay, let's jump right in. I had forgotten about this until recently and thought I would share. I think it fits in here. It isn't a huge thing, but it resulted in me getting something I wanted, but couldn't afford, and then winning money with it. When I was younger and through my early to mid-adult years, I was an avid bowler. 200 plus average back when that actually meant you were good, before the bowling ball technology boom, which comes into play here. And I worked at the local bowling center from the time I was 16 through 21 or so, and then again later on in my early 20s, working the back, pin setters, front of the house, etc. So knew how things operated, what could go wrong, etc. I was bowling at a different center one day. The first frame after each shot, my ball came back with a small nick out of it. Nothing major, but yeah. So I put that ball away and brought out an old ball that I never used, but was in one of my bags. Next 2 or 3 shots, another nick each time. Fourth frame, it finally came back with a fairly large chunk taken out of it. Usually that means there's a nail or a screw that had worked its way loose and the ball is catching on it, or a piece of metal has broken near the ball lift and is cutting into it. I take the ball up to the counter and tell the manager and show him what had happened. Now, I was only 4 frames into the game and said I would move, and he said no. They couldn't move me as they had a party coming in and no lanes available. He said just keep bowling and the pro shop will repair the ball. I asked if he was sure. He said yep, he will go in and tell them to fix it, and the center would pay for it. Most pro shops are individually owned and operated. The owner rents the space from the center. This was no exception. Now, having done simple pro shop work, I know for a fact there is no way it can be fixed if I keep bowling with it and this keeps happening. One gouge can be repaired fairly easily as long as it is not on the track of the ball. The track is the contact point where your ball rolls down the lane, so anything in that line just can't be fixed and will throw off the ball as it rolls since it can't be perfectly rounded back. Depending on the core of the ball and how you throw it, the track can be 3 to 4 inches wide as the ball flares going down the lane. But massive multiple gouges all over the place? Nope. So I keep bowling 2 or 3 games knowing that I am getting a new bowling ball out of this. Of course, the huge chunks keep coming out of the ball. I get finished and there probably isn't a 2-inch by 2-inch section of the ball that isn't damaged. I take the ball into the pro shop and the conversation goes, "What the hell happened to this ball? Did it get hung up in the pin setter or something? The lane I was on damaged it each time I threw it. The manager said you would fix it. Why do you keep bowling? I can't fix this." The manager told me to keep bowling after I showed him the first gouge. Pro shop guy then calls in the manager of the center. "I know you said he was bringing in a damaged ball, but did you tell him to keep bowling after you saw the damage?" "Yeah, we couldn't move him, so I told him to just bowl out his games and you would fix it." "I can't fix this, you're gonna have to replace his ball." "What?" Bunch of arguing back and forth about why it can't be fixed, the ball I have they don't carry, etc. Fine, replace it with anything on the wall except for the Excalibur. The Excalibur was almost 50% more expensive than regular bowling balls. It was the first reactive resin ball on the market. Reactive resin is a compound that made the ball hook much more than a traditional urethane ball. It revolutionized the game and ruined it according to some, since it allowed average and below average bowlers to suddenly improve drastically due to not having to be anywhere near as accurate, and took a lot of skill from the game. But I digress. So I can pick any ball other than the Excalibur and you will pay for it, drilling and all? Yes. Okay, thanks. Manager leaves. Can I have store credit for that ball on the wall, then apply it to the Excalibur, and I will pay the difference? Sure, we can do that. And proceeds to measure my hand and drills the ball, and I pay like 40 bucks for what was then between a $150 and $200 ball that I could not have afforded at the time. Bowled my second ever 300 game with it less than a month later, and won 2 center tournaments with it and a bunch of high game pot money during league play. That ball paid for itself 10 times over in the first 2 months. This story started out so slow that you could hear a pin drop, but then they got the ball rolling. I'll spare you a long comment here, but I'm pretty sure the manager got framed by OP in a preemptive strike. This story, though, was right up our alley. I can't wait to see the comments on this one. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Laburnum Mount, the free water cup that ended up not being free, a drive-through tale. Let's jump right in. I just went and picked up some food from a chain I worked at briefly years ago, which reminded me of this story. I hated that job, but I still loved their food. I was working the drive-thru when a regular customer drove up. He was a catty and rude fellow who worked at the mall next door, so I had dealt with him enough to know that he was a jerk and to not even bother trying to give excellent customer service because he was just not a friendly person. He gave his order, which included a cup of water. No problem, sure thing. We prepared his food, bagged it, and I started to pour his water. He got to the window and started fussing at me immediately because he needs a bigger water than that. That cup is tiny and useless, and I have to have a bigger cup. Let's talk about our cups for a moment. I assume you all know that a fountain soda machine is extremely inexpensive to run and is highly profitable. It costs about 4 to 7 cents to fill a cup. Drinks cost money because the cup itself can cost more than the beverage itself. Our soda cups came in small, medium, and large. Then we had a free water cup, which held about 1 cup, about 230 milliliters. It's small, I won't lie, but it was free, and I get wanting to minimize food costs from a business perspective. I start explaining to him that the free water cups are this size, but he interrupts me before I can tell him that I can go ahead and give him water in one of the bigger cups, which I did on a fairly regular basis, and starts yelling at me about how stupid that is and how he will pay for a bigger cup. Malicious compliance time. But first, let's talk again about our cups. The small was big, medium was bigger, the large was a swimming pool. Seriously, it's a giant cup. It costs about $2.50. He didn't say what size he wanted, only that he'd pay for a bigger cup. I grabbed the large cup, added the cost to his total, and stared at him while the water laboriously trickled out of the spigot into his cup. The machine had very low water pressure without the carbonation, so it took a while to fill up. It was nearly full when I made a mistake. I swear I did not mean to do this, but I accidentally got the cup too close to the spigot next to the water, and a giant splash of dark-colored cola ended up in that very nearly full water. I looked at him, said oops, poured it out, and started over. The time dragged. Oh, how he glared at me. I had to try so hard not to laugh or look smug. It was awfully difficult. He was so rude and impatient, and if he hadn't have been, I would have just given him the darn water in a bigger cup, and all that time wouldn't have been wasted. Whatever, he deserved it. Have a glorious day, Reddit. Cheers. Ah yes, they just wanted some water, and OP poured them a large cup of malicious compliance. Well done, OP. Our next story today comes to us from SCM Glove. Forced to honor contract and then asked to sign a new one. Let's jump right in. This was over 20 years ago, but I was reminded of it today and thought it would be appreciated here. When I was 16, I got my driver's license and a job delivering the newspaper. I had about 225 papers per day and 300 on Sundays. The pay was decent for a kid, and it only took about 2 hours to finish my deliveries. It was great in the summer, then school started and it got really hard. I was sleeping in class and making mistakes. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to deliver, and going to bed early meant I had a serious case of FOMO because my friends hung out until 8 or 9 every day. So I asked my boss if I could get out of my 6-month contract. He was super cool up until this point, and I honestly thought he'd let me slide as long as he had a replacement. I was wrong. He treated me like a villain and gave me the whole speech about honoring our commitments and how I need to learn respect for myself, and if I backed out of the contract then, he'd come after me for a bunch of money in fees and penalties. Whatever, I only had 2 months left in my contract. My mom was super cool and would drive my route for me sometimes, and I went to bed earlier. About 2 weeks after the contract discussion with my boss, he stopped by my house to tell me about some changes with my route. He says, yeah, it'll be so great for the customer because instead of 6 a.m., they'll get their paper by 5 a.m. So you should see an increase in happy customers. Oh, and you'll be getting a small raise because from now on, the paper won't be delivered to your house on a pallet. Instead, you'll drive down to a town 15 minutes away and get your papers between 1:30 a.m. and 2:15 a.m. I mean, he pitched this to me like it was the greatest news ever. I reminded him that I'm in high school and I can't be waking up at 1 a.m. And I told him there's no way this is better for me. He kind of blew off my concerns and I said, Don, my contract says that the papers will be delivered to my house no later than 4 a.m. and that it is my responsibility to deliver them by 6 a.m. That is what I agreed to, and that is what I will do until my contract is up. He again blew me off and said, oh yeah, no big deal. We'll get you a new contract with the changes, but the end date will be your original end date, so it's all good. I admit that I was not a super clever kid, but I began to see my out. I said I wasn't going to sign a new contract and that I'd recently been taught that it's important to honor the deals we make and how important it was that I follow through with my commitments. He could hear the sarcasm dripping off my words, and he thought he could power trip me into compliance. He got mad and threatened to fire me if I don't sign a new contract. I actually laughed at him and said that'd be great. I was a bit of a little crap to him at this point, and I told him if the paper showed up to my driveway before 4 a.m., then I'd deliver them. But if not, then I'll consider it a breach of contract and I'd have to terminate my relationship with the newspaper. I was in a great mood and had no problems at all. It was actually my mom who was furious that they'd pulled these changes on a high school kid trying to make an honest buck. I was just glad to never deliver another paper. I wonder if OP's boss was crushed by the news. I was impressed to see that OP did this without a crossword. I guess the times have changed. Yeah, that's twice in one video. Our next story today comes to us from For Top Mass Stay Sale. I guess the car is still mine then. Let's jump right in. I'm not exactly sure this fits the sub, but I want to share this story, so here goes. When I was 18, late 1990s, I had a silver AMC Sprint with powder blue interior. I didn't know crap about cars, but it was a sexy little oil dribbling thing. It had bald tires that would spin the car 360 if I didn't brake cautiously, but I loved it. Until it died unexpected and I had to have it towed to a shop a week before I was to leave the country for 4 months. I was a kid and didn't know cars, and something major was wrong that I don't remember, but I couldn't afford to fix it. Something like $4 grand to repair. I couldn't afford it and was leaving the country for a while anyway. The mechanic said I could just leave it there and they would just deal with it or scrap it if I didn't care. Cool. I no longer have a car, but I'm leaving anyway, so who cares? I paid the bill for the work they did and left. When I got home from my many months abroad, I went through a massive stack of mail that included one letter saying the car had been impounded, another that it had been auctioned off, and after the auction date, several parking tickets that amounted to about $400. I called the city and asked how I could be liable for parking tickets after the car was auctioned to a new owner. They said it was still in my name. The new owner hadn't changed the title. It was my responsibility. I was furious, but what could I do? The title was in my name and they couldn't even give me the name of the person who bought it. I had to pay or it would be sent to collections. So I'm walking to my friend's apartment a block away from my old place, and right across the street from her building, I see my car. I still have keys, so I go home and frantically grab them and go back. I get into the car and start pulling all the papers from the glove box and sort through them looking for the new owner's name. Just then, 2 guys run up screaming that I'm in their car and what the F do I think I'm doing? I say, you bought it from auction and didn't change the title? You owe me $400 for the parking tickets in my name. They insist they don't owe me crap. Not my fault, you left it in your name. I smile and calmly start the engine and say, okay then, it's in my name, it's legally mine, and drive away. Thanks for repairing the engine. OP mentioned in an edit below the story that they never heard from those people again. They had the car for another year or two, they even put new tires on it, and sold it properly before another trip abroad. Let's see, let's balance this out a little bit. $400 for tickets compared to a couple $1,000s for repairs. Yeah, I'd say you got the better side of that one. Last story today comes to us from Bo Brendy. You need to think about whether you want to work here or not. Let's jump right in. In my late teens, early 20s, I worked at a bar and restaurant that were next door to each other, owned by the same people, and attached through the kitchen. I took shifts at both. They were located in a pretty sketchy area of my city. The restaurant was a pretty cheap diner and pizza place that catered to the neighborhood, and some of the customers could be pretty sketchy, and some were cheap AF. There was one couple in particular that I couldn't stand. I called them Sonny and Cher, as they comically had similarities to their namesakes. They were the worst. Always ordered the special, demanded all of my attention, wanted endless refills, emptied the sugar, salt, and pepper shakers into plastic baggies. You get the picture. All while pretending that we were great pals, knowing full well that they were going to leave me their standard tip of 1 nickel. Happened every time. The boss paid us under the table. At the end of the week, I would write down the hours I worked that week, multiply it by my hourly wage, pay myself from the till, and leave the slip of paper with my calculations in the till. The boss decided to start closing the restaurant an hour earlier during the week. Obviously, people that had been used to the old hours would come in right at closing. This would cause me to stay later than my posted shift. After a few weeks, my boss noticed that I was paying myself after closing and asked why. I explained that I was having to stay past the closing time when I still had customers. He was not happy with my reason and told me in no uncertain terms was I to pay myself after closing time. No problem, but I don't work for free. So from then on, when people would come in towards the end of my shift, I would ask what they planned on ordering. If there was time for it to be prepared and eaten, I would serve them. If not, I politely explained that we were closing soon and could not accommodate them. My boss caught wind of this. He was not happy. He came into the restaurant during a really busy lunch shift and told me he needed to talk to me in the bar next door right now. He followed behind me through the kitchen, screaming at me in Greek the whole way. I do not speak Greek. When he got me out of earshot of the restaurant, he switched to English and went up one side of me and down the other. Told me I had better think about whether I wanted this job or not, then told me to get back to work and left the premises. I went back to a chaotic mess, and I was pissed. It really didn't take me long to think about it, maybe a minute. I realized that I really did not want this job. So I paid myself what I was owed and left a note informing him of my decision. I gathered my belongings, I told the cook I was quitting, and walked out the door with a spring in my step. I was full of adrenaline and had no idea what to do next. There was a bus approaching, so I decided to get on. Guess who was on the bus? Sonny and Cher. They were confused to see me as they knew I should still be on shift. I told them that I no longer worked there. They wanted to know why I had quit. Well, they asked, so I launched into a very detailed explanation of why I hated it. They featured heavily in the story. They were so embarrassed that I think they got off before their stop. It was one of the most satisfying experiences I have ever had. I heard later that the cook thought I was kidding, had run across to the store for something, and would be right back. Eventually, the customers went into the kitchen looking for me, and he figured it out. Now, down in the comments for this one, OP actually fleshed out the bus trip a little bit, and so here it goes. It says, I quickly recapped for them the situation that had caused me to quit, but said that I had been sick of it for a while because of all the cheap, demanding customers. You know, like you guys, I said. I proceeded to reminisce about all of the crappy things they had done and listed out the stuff they would steal. Creamers, napkins, sweetener packets, etc. They would even take the toilet paper out of the bathroom. I was polite throughout the conversation, just very matter of fact. Also notable, my voice carries. I think most people on the bus were listening to me with amusement. I was giddy. Sonny just sat there blinking really fast. Cher turned purple and started kind of sputtering. Then she rang the bell and dragged him to the door by the sleeve. As the bus pulled away from the curb, I saw them standing on the sidewalk, staring after the bus, looking completely bewildered. Don't we all wish we had that opportunity after we've left a job to either see one of the managers or see a painful customer like this one and just tell them what we think of them. I recently had this opportunity myself. I drove by a house, saw one of my old managers standing outside, opened my window, and yelled out, "Hole!" 10 out of 10, highly recommend it. Oh, and screw you, Rick. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.